All right, everybody, welcome to Meeple Syrup. It is Wednesday night, and it's 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, and out there where George is, it is 6. You're like 3 hours behind, man. What's going on with that?
It's nice being behind. It's good. Get to let you do all the.
Oh,
You get the
I
fun.
did all the heavy lifting, and then
That's
you get
right.
to
Yeah, I just
relax.
get the.
Oh. All right. So, everybody, we have two very special guests with us tonight. We have the one, the only, the Mondo Davis, who is there down below me, I think. Most people should probably see him below me. That's where he is. And we have John over there of Brieger Creative right there. There he is. And we brought these two gentlemen on the show today to talk about development because George had a burning question. George, what was that burning question?
Sort of a general domain of questions, but where are the boundaries between design and development? Are they
Oh, that's a good
fuzzy or
one. I didn't
distinct?
actually know that. That's a good one.
And where on the other side as well, like can you does development traipse into publishing space? Yeah, but that whole what is development, and we'll get into it.
Cool. Cool.
Every
That's a
week you
great
ask for
question.
that, and I should be prepared.
So, howdy to I do it all the time. Howdy, Mondo and John. So we're gonna start off by getting to know Mondo and John a little bit before we start into the deep, the hard hitting questions, the journalism that you can expect from George and Sen, which is not great, but it's a thing. We like asking questions. So we're gonna do a roundtable discussion on design and development, specifically after we hear from the people we have as guests with their origin stories. So we'll start with John. John, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into gaming, and then specifically how you got into development.
Yeah. I'm John Brieger. I'm the studio head of Brieger Creative. We are America's largest freelance contract development firm. And we work with board game publishers and license holders to take games, as we say, from prototype to product. So we do about 15 games a year for publishers at a variety of sizes, all the way down from little indies up to Asmodee North America. And I love being a developer. I do some design as well, and I do co-own the publishing studio Solis Game Studio with my longtime friend Chris Solis. But my primary role and my primary love is always being a developer.
Excellent.
I guess you asked about how we got into gaming. I was a corporate designer for a number of years, and I had a very strict agreement with my employer that said basically anything you make, anything you design belongs to us, and you can get exceptions to this, but they have to be very, very specific. And I said, well, I like board games. What if I made some board games? And I never really did anything with that for a while. And then I moved cities to London, and I joined for fun the really excellent Playtest UK meetup group there. And for the first time, I was watching other designers who were working on their games, and I was just participating in playtests. And I was like, this process looks like so much fun, and I need a new hobby. I'm, alone in a foreign city, and at the time I was in a distance relationship, and so I wasn't really going out to bars or anything. So I decided I'd try game design as a hobby. And initially I did start as a designer, but my background as a user experience researcher, what I found was the part that I loved the most was watching other people play. And when I signed my first game as a designer to a publisher, they were like, hey, you've been talking a lot about playtesting. Would you want to try this development role for us on this other game that's coming out before yours? And that was Kirk Dennison at the now closed Peacekeeper Games. And that was my first really big development project, was Rurik Dawn of Kiev by Stanislav Kordansky. Right. And I loved that process. And slowly I started doing development freelance on the side as an individual contractor. And then in 2018, I left my job and decided to become a freelancer full-time in the board game industry. I was definitely underemployed for the first sort of year I was a freelancer. I was living mostly off savings and working, I probably had about 25 hours a week of paid work at the most. But eventually things picked up. I got pretty busy. And then at the start of 2020, I decided to bring on more people. And I started the Brieger Creative Studio, where now we have a team and we tend to work in pairs or trios on games. And that's been our model now for almost 5 years.
Wow, that's awesome. And Mondo, what about you? You have a different path as well.
Yeah, so I started out designing games as an independent designer in 2015. Signed my first game in 2019 with 25th Century Games, and yeah, kind of did that for a long time. I mean, that was sort of my main focus, was just independent design as a side gig, as I was a teacher full time, and got about 12 games under contract in a span of like 4 years, I think, 5 years, and by the early last year, I was hired to work for the Op as the senior developer on hobby games over there. So the Op is like a relatively big company for board games, but it's split up into 3 different hubs, which is the Party Family Hub, the co-branding hub, and the Hobby Hub. And I work directly with Pat Marino on all of our development all of our development on all of our projects there. So it's been really fun. It's been a fun transition from kind of just like straight design into the development side of things. I'm excited to talk about it because I've really fallen in love with development over the last few years. Like I find there's a lot more kind of exploration and satisfaction in like tuning something up to make it really good. When kind of all the upfront work has been done, as far as like, finding the core thing that's cool and interesting, like then taking that and turning it into something awesome has just been really, really great. I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm glad I get to do it in a capacity that pays the bills and provides for the family. And
That's right.
lets me do cool
And you
stuff.
just happen to live around the corner from Pat, so it's all good too.
Yeah.
That helped.
And just from my perspective, I still do some development on the side. Yeah, no, we can talk about Pat later. Yeah, I do development on the side as a freelancer, so we kind of have all of the stuff here, which is really cool. So, George, why don't you start off the round table by asking some questions for everybody to answer?
Well, I think it's always best to define our terms. So what to each of you is development, and if it's helpful in that definition, what isn't development when we talk about the progression of a game?
To me, and I don't know where sort of Mondo and Sen fall on this, development is pretty nebulous. And if you take a look at all the tasks that a developer does through the whole life cycle of the game, those include designing card content. They include designing core systems sometimes. They include refining systems. They include playtesting and revisions, usability and testing. And so if you look at these and you're a designer and you may be thinking sort of, hey, those sound like all the things that I do. And to me, I think fundamentally development work is design work from the practical and process perspective of what is being a designer. If you think about sort of across any industry, the person who comes up with the idea for a chair and the person who finishes the design of the chair are both chair designers. But in board games, we have this sort of authorship culture. And so to me, the distinction is where a developer comes in the process. And the thing that I think is very clear that a developer doesn't do is come up with the original idea for the game. If you came up with the original idea for the game, you're a designer. But what is the nature of the relationship between development as a branch of work and design as a branch of work can be really nebulous. I've had games come in that came out of the development process extremely, extremely different or redesigned. And was that me acting in my capacity as a developer? I tend to think mostly yes. Only a few times did I feel like I had become a co-designer on those titles. A lot of the times I felt very much like I was within my purview as a developer, even though I was doing significant amounts of design work in terms of what is the game, what makes it fun, sort of things. But I wasn't the originator of the concept and therefore in the designer role.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think that's well said. I don't know that I have too much to add to it, but I know that kind of as a developer, I feel like the way that I sort of self-identify as like the role that I play in the lifespan of a game is essentially like the game comes to me when it's already pretty good. Like typically in my capacity, right, as a developer for a publishing company, like we have games that have already been signed, they're already under contract. They're more or less done from the designer's perspective, as far as like they've gotten it to a place where it's pitch ready, it's been play tested, all these things. And when it comes to me, I kind of really what I do then is sort of go after it with a microscope and like really zero in on kind of the pain points, the things that are harder to learn, the things that don't add to to the general experience of what's fun about the game. I mean, most of what I do is like try and take things out of the game, just trying to streamline the mechanics and trying to like again zero in, focus in on that interesting core mechanic that makes the game fun and exciting in the first place. Because a lot of designers are, and myself as a designer, like we love game design and we love game design concepts and we love cool ideas and fun ideas. And even very accomplished and successful designers that have a lot of games published, like they still will hold on to stuff or like include things in their design because they love it or because some of their playtesters have said positive things about it. But like my job as a developer is to look at all of those things and be like, this thing is essential, this thing is not. No matter how cute it is or how clever it is or how this specific group of gamer or type of gamer really enjoys this, like this is not essential to the gameplay experience. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a kind of a surgeon in there, just like getting rid of
Mhm.
unnecessary organs.
And I think there's
Unnecessary
a sort of a popular perception that development is a lot about like balancing and like cutting edge cases and that sort of stuff. And it's true that that's part of it, but I think I spend a lot more of my time sort of looking at like what are the things that are the best about this game and how do we make them shine. It's not just about polishing, it's also about sort of elevating what is the core thing from the designer, from the vision of the product that's going to really make it wow people when they see it and when they play it.
Yeah. So just to add to what was said, I agree with everything that both of you are saying. And my 2 cents would be that I usually come in, like you said, Mondo, at the 95% line when it's like, I just got 5% to do, but it's a lot of work to do that 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm called in, it's usually an alignment problem. It's a difference in opinion between the publisher and the designer, and they don't know how to fix it. And so we come in there and we use psychology because that's my area of study. And we basically get them both to tell us what you see the final vision as and commit to that vision. And then we have free reign to then make the game fit that vision because both of you agreed this is the vision and the publisher has definitely input on like their own audience and what they want the product to look like, and the designer has say on this is what I intended the game to do and how it's supposed to have an outcome like this or feelings like that. And then we now have carte blanche to kind of go in there and massage it until it meets both of those visions. That's kind of how I see it. I do see myself a little bit as like a hired gun who comes in and just cleans up the town a little bit, right? If I was to use a cowboy analogy, I'm a very short cowboy. But that's kind of the way I like it, and that's why I still have the same feelings about it that I think Mondo does. Like, it's really fun to tinker in somebody else's sandbox without all the baggage, right? Which you're talking about, oh, these are my babies, please don't kill my babies, and I'm in there murdering babies left, right, and center with my 6 guns. Because
That'll be
I
the
don't
pull quote
have
for the episode.
yeah, right. I don't have the baggage that a lot of designers have, and I have baggage myself when I'm the designer. Because you're right, I thought it was cool, I thought it was cute, I thought it was clever. I've got feedback from all of these other people who said it was really cool, but then as a developer, I look at that stuff and I say it is, but that's not the audience, or it is, but the product line demands this, or it is, but whatever the constraint is. And so I'm working more constrained than the wide open sandbox that a lot of designers tend to play in. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you said something super important that I didn't really tune into as an independent designer, but I think that developers, in a sense, very much are product designers, in the sense that
Yeah.
we have a better understanding, working for a publishing company, in my case, of what is going to make the game successful in like financial market terms, right? Like not necessarily something a designer has to think about, or is, I mean, as myself, I was never thinking, I wasn't usually designing games thinking like, how can I make the most amount of money off of this game? But like I work for a company where if we don't turn profit, like that's a serious problem. So knowing what sort of best practices are, or how to identify like the things that are going to, like, audiences are really going to lock into, they're going to be able to see on the back of the box, or like they're going to be able to tell their friends about the, you know, the play, like knowing how, or working at out how to design a product that is going to be successful is like a really important part of the process that I don't think happens as much at a, especially when you're a beginner, at a designer level, whereas as developers, like that is part of our focus, right? Is like, how do we get this game to sell copies?
Yeah.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
even when you have the same product, or a designer that has a really strong product focus, you know, one of the things I always say is I am not a better designer than any of the designers that I work with. I work with designers who are vastly more talented than I am, but I still feel like I'm able to contribute value to their designs because I get to approach the process with knowledge that they don't have about the product, about the audience. You know, when they're designing, they don't know necessarily who the publisher is going to be. So they might not know constraints about cost. They might not know that the publisher has built an audience for all their family games, where family games from this publisher must play 5 players. And so, you know, even though the game is great, we're going to need to work on figuring out how to scale it to 5, because that's the audience that the publisher has built for their family game line. And or adding solo modes for, you know, certain kinds of audiences. And so I think there's a lot of that too. There's the product, and then there's also knowing who the publisher is selling to, and what is the we sometimes say like the path to market, and being able to have such clear vision on that is something that allows us to do some different kinds of design work than a designer can do when they don't have the path to market set yet.
That's right. That's very good.
Yeah.
I like the word that you use, vision, because that's what we actually call our initial process, is a vision process. And we just are working to align them. That's all we do, is we align the visions together so that it's like two transparencies, and as they overlap, it becomes hopefully one thing. So little edges here, little edges there, but yeah, that is the goal.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I really like about working sort of in all sides of the board game industry, and in any of the roles I've worked in so far, is people's incentives really are aligned, right? Making a great game that does well on the market allows you to make more great games. It allows you to impact more players. You know, I don't think any of us are making games because we want to make the maximal amount of money, but I make games because I want to bring joy into the world. And when I make a game that can reach more players, that sells more copies, you know, I'm furthering that goal. And so the monetary incentives from the publishing side align with my goals as a developer of bringing more joy into the world. And I don't think that those goals are mutually exclusive, except in extremely rare cases.
Although I would say I feel like there is a bit of a curve to it, because like I've worked with new designers who are very intent on communicating their creative vision, right? Like this game is a creative product of this thing that I want it to do, feel like this. I want it to look like this. I want it to evoke this type of emotion. But I've also worked with, you know, again, like very successful published designers that have a lot of, you know, names that people know, kind of designers that are also like very much, you know, I guess just confident in their own design decisions, to the point where they'll hold on to that stuff over kind of the advice that we're giving as development, you know, as development team, of like, this is going to sell more copies if we get rid of this thing. But then, you know, people that like are super confident in their design abilities, maybe rightfully so, right? I get pushback from them more than I do from people that are kind of like in the middle of their design experience or something. It's been interesting.
Yeah. That is fascinating. So I did actually want to ask you both, when do you show what you're doing to the designer?
That's a fun question.
I know.
For us, it entirely depends on kind of the expectations that are set up front. When we sign a contract, we basically want to know what their expectations are, because we have the resources to just take a design from a designer and complete it without them having seeing it until we're ready to like send it to the market. But we don't want to do that, right? Like we want designers to have input. We want them to feel like they're part of the process, of course. So often it's a conversation we have up front, and for the most part, designers for us tend to be more on the like, you guys do what you want to do side of it. In which case we will kind of like make those decisions, right? Like we'll identify the things that we think need work, then we'll do the work and we'll find a solution, and then we'll take those solutions that we've kind of already vetted and sorted out and play tested to the designer and be like, here's what we got. What do you think? That's been most of the games that we've worked on. There's been a couple where the designers are a lot more like, I kind of want to be in every play testing session. I want to be in every development meeting. I want to participate. So if that's the case, like we accommodate that, of course, because we want a designer to be happy with the games that they sign, that they publish with us, obviously, because we want their help, we want their support when it comes time to send it to market. We don't want them complaining about how the op did all this nonsense to my game that I didn't like. But it does depend on the designer, though, for us.
Yeah, and for us, like some of it's the designer expectation. As a contract studio, a lot of it is which publisher we are working for at a given moment. They'll set their own expectations, and they do vary pretty wildly. We have some where the designer is very integrated into the process. We have some where we're doing sort of we call like checkpoint builds. So every time there's sort of a major milestone in testing or revisions, we say, hey, here's a print and play. Don't feel like you have to play it, but if you do and you give us feedback, that's great. And then in some cases, the designer really is hands off. We've worked with some games that were previously published and are being issued in new editions with updates, and the designers, like, hey, I was happy with this game when it came out before. Do what you want with it, and let me know how it goes. And all of those models work for us. It's really just a matter of setting expectations and building trust. A lot of working with a designer as a developer is building trust with them that just because you weren't part of the original process, that you understand what they were going for, you understand their vision. Because when you start a project, the designer is the expert. They know more about the game than you do. But often, not always, but often, there's a shift at some point during the development process where the combination of the fact that you have the publishing knowledge and the audience knowledge and the product side knowledge, plus now enough history with the game, shifts, and you often become the expert on the game. And preparing them, I don't know that I use this when I talk to designers, because I don't want it to come across as arrogance. But like, you want to build the trust so that when that shift in expertise happens and you start having forceful opinions about the game design that come from a position of expertise, that they trust that those are real and that they're valid.
Mm-hmm. I really like that building of trust statement, which is good. And I think, like I said, the way that we do it is by listening straight from the get-go. We ask for their opinion. We ask for their insight. We're building up that relationship, even though I will tell you guys right now that I don't show work until the work is kind of done. And that's usually because we've been called in to solve a very specific problem. And it's, if you get in the way of that, we're not going to solve anything. And we're just going to go around the table again and have this discussion again. And so we work on a similar system where it's milestones. But what we do first is we do like a document, and our document's called an alignment document, where we outline what you said you think this game does, and then we tell you where it doesn't do it. And we propose
Mhm.
fixes, and then we tell the publisher, if you'd like to engage us to fix it, here's what our rates are, here's the milestones and delivery timelines. But the designer could go do those with our feedback, or you could ignore the feedback entirely, right? So we're not getting into a big contract without having buy-in, because ain't nobody got time for that. Because that is like the bane of my existence. I don't need to do development work. I just like to do development work. And so if you're taking me away from my games, but you're being problematic about it, I don't want to do that. So I'm actually usually trying to work myself out of a job by saying, hey, here's what we found, go and do it yourself and see what it comes up
Mm.
with. But if you want to hire us to do it, here's our exorbitant rates. And oftentimes we do get hired because we're really good at our jobs. So again, we work in teams of 3. So the same thing that John does with his teams. It's me and Alara Cameron usually, and then her partner Katie, or another psych prof that I work with, Scott. And then we have like a bunch of people we play test with that we pay, and it's great. But that all comes out of like the big pot of money that the publishers are paying us. And so we work like the little sub studio, just doing all that stuff. But it is freelance. Az Anything is asking if anybody at the table works freelance. We're 2 of us are freelance, and then 1 is in house. So Mondo is in house. John and I are freelance. I'm like pure freelance because I don't have a studio, and John runs a studio of creatives that does this. So that's the answer to As Anything. Yeah, John, you had your hand up for a second.
Oh, no. I was just doing like yeah. I am a freelancer. Like we're sort of on the agency model, right? So I consider it's freelance work from a structure perspective, but it's a lot of repeat clients and a lot of going back to the same series over and over.
Which
And
is
then
great.
something we haven't actually talked about with George is something I really actually liked that Kat brought up when we first met, was that the 2 of you often are sort of trading off from an in-house development perspective. When you're an indie publisher, you're wearing all the hats, and often one of you is sort of wearing the designer hat on a given game, and one of you is wearing a little bit more of the development hat on a given game. And I was sort of curious. I know you've mostly been asking questions about sort of how you navigate that for yourselves.
It's challenging living in the same home, because it can be. I mean, we're all emotionally attached to some degree to the things that we are, especially from the design perspective. And when someone looks at it and says, like, I think some of these things need to go, that can be. We are connected in more than just through this product, so it's a challenge. But it's also, I mean, both of us come from IT, and we know, like, when the IT developer is either testing their own code or writing their own requirements, things go awry. Like, there's definitely a perspective lost in one of those ends, and it's just not sensible for us to attempt individually to both design and develop whatever we're working on. Like, it will not end up in a good place. So it's a necessary sort of thing, and I think it helps us grow quite a bit as well, because even though we tend to design in slightly different directions, if I can take, whatever's positive from refining something that she's doing and think about what I'm designing, like, well, maybe I should incorporate some of that, a forethought before I hand her something to look at and work on. And, so we simplify, or accelerate's not the word I'm looking for, but there's less wasted time in the process, if I can think beforehand, like, where is this going to go wrong? Yeah, thank you. Yes, that's the sort of thing I'm trying to say.
I love what you're saying. I really like what you're saying there, and it's true, right? I think if developers, or at least the designers who we're developing for, come to the table understanding that we're doing our jobs to make this better, whatever that means. The better is nebulous, but we're all on the same team, and it's not adversarial. Things go way better. And I think that is something that, you got to trust us. You got to let us cook. You got to let us get in there and mess around a bit. And some stuff might get a little bit broken before it gets fixed. but the goal is to make a great game, right? A shining example. And like you said, John, elevate things, not just polish it here and there. It's like, really, we want to take this and make it even better than it is now, for everybody's benefit. So I think that's a great point, George. That if you can communicate well, I find that a lot of what we do is communication skills, right? As developers, there's the math and there's the design part, but a lot of it is articulating the reasons why we're doing the changes, because that is where I find we run into the most resistance, is when people don't understand the whys behind the whats, and that way, if you don't explain it well, then feathers can get ruffled, right? Because again,
But
you're killing the babies.
I mean, it's you mentioned. I mean, this is going to sound incredibly naive to all of you, but like when I initially I would Kat would design something. I would play with her. I'd be at the play test. I would play it with her as well, and then she'd be like, "I'd like you to develop this," and I'd be like, "Yeah, fine," and I would take it away, and but we had no formal discussion as to like what is your vision for this? How would you like it to feel at the end? What are you looking for as far as playtime and so I would take my subjective determinations from just being sitting in on the process of playing the game and inevitably go off in the wrong direction, and came to realize after countless no, we need to, if that when we make that handover, we need to have that discussion and document it so we can always reference back and say like, oh, this is
Hmm.
the thing we were trying to accomplish, and um, are the things I'm trying to do actually moving it in that direction or not? Did we have a misunderstanding at the beginning? But like, yeah, there was definitely a lot of missteps without having that clear communication from the start as to where this is supposed to be going.
Hmm.
Yeah, that alignment's important. Which I
And
think it's a good practice for designers too, to especially if you're starting out, to like think about that, right? Because like I don't think that was the thing I was initially thinking about. Like what is the experience of playing this game? Like what do I want this game to feel like? Because it was about how do these mechanics work, or what's this turn structure or whatever. But I do think that the earlier you can kind of identify that as sort of a guiding light to design towards is like, yeah, really great, even before it gets to talking through it about development with somebody else.
yeah,
Stage,
and something that I think is challenging. Sen mentioned like getting in there and messing things up. Is there are often times in the development cycle where we make a change that it makes the game worse. It's not like a linear line of game gets better. And sometimes you're trying something where the designer has a tightly wound system that makes the game work towards an objective. But we realize that there's another objective we also need to be working towards from a vision or product perspective. And so we make a change that allows us to work towards that. But it's not tightly wound anymore. It hasn't been through the kinds of refinement and testing that the designer put on their own design. And so that's where that trust really comes in is, I'm like, oh, well, we're trying this thing to accomplish this goal. They play it and they're like, the game is bad. It doesn't work well anymore. And there's a point where you have to say, well, trust me, like the game is bad now, but we're going to get it to the point where it's good. And now we're meeting all the goals that we need to meet. Right.
Well, it's
Hmm.
what Sen said too about communication is important there, because it's like you need to be able to say the why, right? Like
Yeah.
we're doing this thing that doesn't work yet, but we need to do something because here is this problem that like we can identify and articulate, and you can understand as the designer and agree with, and like let's figure this out together or whatever.
And the same goes
Yeah.
for publisher and stakeholder relations too. Like I
Oh
have those
yeah.
conversations with the project managers of the publisher as often as I have them with the designers too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And in our process, we're talking milestones and things like that, deliverables, and we build in exit points at every single point. Again, because maybe you can take this from here. Why are you going to feel all bad about this because you paid $1 billion to a development company to do it? If you can do it, take it and run with it. We don't mind, because we've done some work for you. We've got some pay out of it. We're not in it to necessarily, drain you of cash. We're in it to make a better game. And if you can take what we've suggested and run with it from here, maybe I get you 3 steps closer, maybe get you 10 steps closer, maybe get you all the way to the finish line. But at any point in that series of events, you can opt out of keeping us engaged, and that's fine by me. That may be not the best way to run a company, but it's definitely peace of mind for me, because I don't want to be doing something that other people could be doing themselves if they think they can do it. Um, they don't need to hire me to do it. I'm not on the contract for completion. I'm on the contract for as far as you want me to carry the load, right, and do
Yeah.
the work for you. And sometimes we're so in there that they go, no, you know this better than we do now. Go and do it. Like John was talking about, that level of expertise shift. And sometimes the designer's like, no, I see exactly what you're doing. I can take it from here, save some money. Great. We're all good now. George, what's the next question?
The next question, and we've sort of started touching on this, so I think it's a good segue, is so as a designer, let's say I'm either thinking about contracting a freelance developer, or I want to present something at a pitch meeting that maybe gets through the first round and then doesn't get rejected by the development team as something unworkable. Like, at what point is a design ready to hand over to development?
So it's so different by designer and by publisher. I have worked on designs that were signed very raw. They were really a core concept and nothing else. And I've worked on designs that were already, essentially great games, and all we were doing was, tiny minor polish. As a designer personally, I will say I have my own personal rule, which is I sign a game to a publisher if I wouldn't cry if they published it with like new art and graphic design and no changes. And that's my own personal line, is what happens if the developer plays it and goes, yeah, it's all good. Right? No notes. Like, I better be happy with that. So when is the design ready? In some ways never, and in some ways as soon as you think it is. I know that's not helpful, but
well,
John.
Yeah,
but it does. I mean, there's an experience element, right? Like, I think that if you're new to design and you haven't been designing much, you do need to hear that from other people, right? Like, you need playtesters to have such a great experience with your game that they're saying good things about it, right? Like, they don't have a lot of criticism, or their experience is really positive, and that's consistent over and over again. I feel like eventually, as you develop as a designer, you'll get to that point where you'll be able to identify that yourself. Like, you'll see the core loop, you'll see the engagement, the player interaction, whatever it is that makes it special, and be like, even if this game needs a lot of polish, there is a publishable core loop in here that is like going to be appealing to an audience, and all that. But I often just like, I want to reiterate that, like, if you're new to design, like, get your game in front of people and listen to the feedback that you're getting. Don't play it or show it to your mom and have her say really nice things about it and be like, oh great, this is ready to go, let's do it. I think that, like, and before you kind of drum up that experience, like the play testing process is really important. But I do agree with that as well, though, John, because I think that it really depends. I know my kind of metric is like, if the feedback that I'm getting from playtesters is entirely about visual aspects of the game, the graphic design of the cards and things like that, of which I am not like an expert, right? That tells me that, like, hey, this, and in addition to like positive, that was really fun, I really enjoyed that, or like this part, or like there's moments that they're identifying, or like a shared experience is being created that's like really positive. If that's the feedback that I'm getting, if that's the bulk of the feedback that I'm getting, like, that tells me that's pretty close.
Yeah, and similar for especially newer designers, the game should be playable when you are not in the room. You don't come in the box. And so if you think about what happens when you're pitching a prototype, especially as a newer designer, what does success look like in a pitch? Success is the publisher says, wow, this sounds really good. Let me take the game back to my team, and then use that and play it with my team, and we're going to evaluate it and then maybe send you a contract. And so you want to be ready for that next step of having a rule book that doesn't fall apart. You want to have tested your game, with some blind tested, some unguided testing, where you're just having players learn from the rule book and playing the game without you. And that is, it's not always necessary to sign a game, but I think as a newer designer, you're going to almost always want to take that step. And even as an experienced designer, it's, almost always you're going to want to take that step as well.
Mm-hmm. So like I said at the beginning, for us, we're basically troubleshooters, right? So when to call in us, specifically my group, is when there is that misalignment, and the publisher and the designer can't figure it out, like how to get it from A to B, where B is what the publisher want and A is where the designer is. So we'll build those bridges for you if you call us in. And it's usually actually pretty early on, when a publisher like the op would ask their people that they signed, "Hey, how involved do you want to be?" Right? And sometimes they ask them that, and the designer says, "Yeah, I don't know what to do from here." They've basically run the gamut on everything possible they could think of, and that's why they want a developer on the project, is because they are either too close, they're totally tapped out of ideas, and then we come in and we kind of massage it again, like I said, into what it could be or should be based on what the publisher now wants. And so you'll find newer designers, by the way, when you sign a game, oftentimes the publisher sees something in it. That doesn't mean they like it as is. That means they see like a nugget, something there, some potential in it, if it could be shaped in one way or another. But they themselves are maybe not designers or developers. Maybe they're just savvy business people who like playing games. And they don't know how to make the changes themselves. And you might not be capable of it. And that's when they're maybe going to call a developer like myself, where that is my area of expertise. So yeah, for us, it is when they're at an impasse. They can't get further without additional assistance. Is when we usually get called in. Like I agree also with Mondo though, that and John, that at some level, um, I would love there to be a little more development, because I know my own faults. I know my own limitations. I co-design with Alara and Jay a lot, and we all know that it's pretty good. It's really good, but man, if they just put a little development into it, it could be so much better. And then when they don't, it's like, oh, come on. But we are pretty happy. Like it's like, yeah, it got published. That's good, and it is okay. But we've also had companies come back where it's basically just like the icons that we used, just like dolled up a little. It's like, come on. Come on, that could have been so much better. Anyway, and it really does depend on the company that you're working with, because so the deeper in hobby you go, like to the little bespoke companies, right? Like they're boutique companies. It's like a one-man show. Usually, you're going to get a lot of good stuff and a lot of love for your product, because that is like one out of two things they're making this year. And other times when you go to a bigger company, having worked with a lot of them, sometimes you actually don't get as much because you're just one product out of many things. And the fact that they have developers is and graphic designers and illustrators on staff is sometimes surprising, that you didn't touch it up as much as I thought you would. Maybe they're like, oh, it's a great game as is, but sometimes you feel like you could have used just a little wee bit more development. Oh, another area of development, just to mention, because this is pretty key. Especially John was mentioning at the beginning, like solo modes and like a fifth player, sixth player. Another thing that we get a lot of development calls for, not necessarily us, but I know like a lot of other developers that get these calls. It's like, can you make 10 more scenarios? That kind of thing, like level and scenario design, which is a different level of expertise when you think about it. But that is definitely something that get cultural. So if you like, it's not system design. It's taking the system and adapting it to various scenarios, and each scenario should have like a little twist and a unique thing about it and some story in there. Then maybe that's for you, and that's another way to get involved in that. Oh yeah,
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 one of the
cool.
we-
So
So uh, Yeah. So who has? Are you adding to it, or you have a different question, Mondo? You have the
I know.
two,
I wanted to add
which
to
is
it.
a different question.
The two
Okay. Okay.
things
Cool.
that you
Go ahead.
said that I wanted to
Oh, I see.
add
I
to.
see.
First of all, is the nugget. Uh, I'm gonna say both of them now, so I don't forget the first one's a nugget, and the second one is like the size of the publisher and kind of the amount of carry a game gets.
Mm-hmm.
But the nugget thing that you mentioned about like a publisher seeing something in your game, I think that that's really, really important as a designer to think about, because so many designs that we get pitched to us might be really good designs, might be really finished, might work really well and be really fun, but they don't have anything that's going to make them stand out from all the other games that are similar to it. Like we get a ton of like
Yes.
drafting tableau building games that, or like trick taking games where like the thing
Oh
that's
God.
different about it is either not there, or it's hard to identify, or it's really not that interesting or whatever. So I think that as a designer, that is something that you have to keep in mind, is like, does this game that I'm pitching, going back to the original question, does this game that I'm pitching have that thing that is different and unique and interesting about it that can be easily communicated to an audience, which is a really important part of that, right? Like quickly pick up the back of the box, you look at it, you say, oh, this game does this thing that I haven't seen before, or that looks really fun or new or novel or whatever. I think that's the thing that you have to focus on as a designer. So that was a good point. The other thing I wanted to say, and I see a lot of head nodding, so if you guys want to jump in on that, let me just finish this point, is so I think the size of a publisher matters, but also the number of games that they publish, because there are
Yes.
small publishers that publish a lot of games, and they have this kind of shotgun approach of, I'm going to put out 12 games a year, I'm going to put out 20 games a year. One of those games will do well, hopefully, and then pay for all the, the other 19 that don't. And I think as a designer, you need to understand who you're pitching to and what their business model is, because if there is a company, whether they're big or small, that has a huge line of games, putting a ton of games out every year, you just need to set your expectations on like how much attention and love your game is going to get. But the size of the company does matter. But I also, like I said, think that it doesn't necessarily, because like at the op, right, we do hobby games. We're doing 3 games next year in 2025. We're like a huge company for hobby board games, right? But like the fact that we're only doing 3 games means we are giving a ton of attention and time to all 3 of those designs, even though we're a big company. Whereas I've worked with publishers where that, they're smaller, but they put out a lot, and that's not necessarily the case. So I think those are important things to think about in this whole pitching process.
I think those are questions that publishers are often happy to answer honestly when you ask them as a designer. Lots of publishers who make multiple releases a year, you can ask like, hey, what's the release plan for the game? What kind of marketing do you think you're going to do on release? And you'll be able to get a sense of, is this a big tent pole for the summer? Is this like for the op, Gnome Hollow at last Gen Con, where we're going to have promotions.
They made balloon sculptures.
Yeah. We're going to have custom sculptures. We're going to take over a room to promote the game. And I also want to encourage you to, as a designer, to understand that for you, every game is a tentpole, right? And every game release is sort of the big one. But it's okay sometimes to have one that isn't the focus of the publisher. And if they're not, actively destroying it, right? Like I have had some where the publisher truly ignored it and bad things happened. I can tell these stories. Winchester Mystery House floor plan was sent to press with copy paste errors. They just copy pasted from one rulebook into another, and huge errors were introduced. No one checked the files before print. The game is essentially unplayable, and that and that was extremely disappointing. But by and large, most publishers, even on the games that aren't their tentpoles, are still putting love and care into them, and they're still checking them. And as a designer, again, some of this is your own personal goals. I often think, my goal is to make games. It's not always just to make a game. And so a game that comes out that's successful, that's well made, builds up a piece of my portfolio and backlog for the next one that maybe could be a tentpole.
Right. There you go. My tentpole story is pretty funny because it's like, yeah, we got this game signed by Z-Man. This is awesome. It's gonna be great. And then they also signed Pandemic Legacy. All right, great, wonderful. we got zero love that year, but it's okay. So when you're in the industry, guys, you'll see. So talking about the op and Pat, I saw Pat. I don't know, like 4 times, maybe in 2024 or 2023, maybe can't remember, but a lot of times I see Pat a lot. Pat's a good friend of mine, and he was carrying the same box at every convention because he saw something in this one game. It's the Fountain game. I think you worked on it too, right?
Yeah,
I can't
I
remember the
was
title of
the
it because we just
developer on
called
it.
it the Fountain game. And so every time he's
Fountain.
like play, it's like, okay, let's play the Fountain game again. Okay, let's play the Fountain game again. Because there was something in it that he really loved. He just
Yeah.
couldn't articulate it until now what it is. And apparently he's like, Sen, you would not believe what it is now. Because I played it like 4 times with them. And we were like, okay, we like it. We like this about it. We like this other thing about it, but I'm not sure how to develop it. And so I can't wait to see it because
Oh man, it's
I
really
know
good.
there's something
It's
there.
good.
I know there's something there, right? And that's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a great example, right? It's like that game had it's called Fountains. It's gonna be out this fall from the op, so we're really excited about it. I was the lead developer on it, so I know that game very, very well, and I still love it, which is important. Like if you spend 6 months, 9 months spending 20 hours a week developing one game and you still really enjoy it, it says something about the quality of the game. But yeah, it's got this really cool 3-dimensional stacking thing, where Kedrick the designer came up with this like brick system that is just like 3-dimensional stacking is like kind of a hard nut to crack, I think, in game design, because it presents a lot of variables that are hard to account for and whatever. But he figured out this really cool system, and the system was like, yeah, this is cool, this is interesting, this is special. The drafting system and the scoring system need some work, whatever, but like this thing that is the middle of this game is amazing, and we can turn this into something really cool. And so it's a great example of what we're talking about. It's like you gotta, if you can say what that thing is in your game, you're in good shape as a designer.
Yeah, the hook is key in that one, right? So
yeah,
very good. We have a question from As Anything, and so as you should know that we're tabletop game designers and developers, that we do use computers a lot. It doesn't necessarily need us to write code, although some of us do code stuff. But John, you wanted to take this question, so go ahead.
So yeah, back to like using AI to generate code at scale. I do write code as part of our development process. So for board games, we do some code-based simulation where we'll write a simple AI, not AI in the sense of a generative AI, but an AI in the sense of, if you're familiar with code, something like a Minimax that can play the game and optimize strategies. And then we also do something called Monte Carlo simulation, and this is essentially you're playing the game randomly, thousands and thousands of times to generate statistics that are difficult to calculate through mathematics. For example, in the game Long Shot the Dice game, it's a horse racing game. We wrote code that automatically raced all of the horses based on their movement values, and ran 10,000 races every time we pushed a button to help us set the odds for which horses would win the race.
Right.
And we do code, a couple projects a year, but we tend not to use AI. And the reason is that historically, I have had troubles with the AI code assistants. I know they are getting better, but I asked AI to write me some code, and it spat out incorrect math. And especially, like, I am not writing AI that is running the. I'm not writing code that's running the game, right? I am writing a tool that needs to give me a precise answer, and the correctness of that answer is the most important thing when I write a code tool to assist me in my work. And AI is not good at being correct. It's good at being approximate, generative AI. And that's a whole separate discussion when we talk about like writing and creative and all sorts of other things for games, which I'm generally strongly against using AI in. But as a tool to assist a workflow process, I've sort of started to shy away from it. Even when it's not doing creative work, when it's doing something like code or transcriptions, because the correctness is so important to me, and I'm not able to trust the results.
Yeah, without going through it with a fine tooth comb, right? I find I'm actually more picky with AI stuff than I am with human generated things, which is maybe good. Maybe that's a good thing. George, next
As the
question.
I'll
Oh,
just answer as the one who does 40 hours of software development a week. It's my only thing. Um, yeah, I think it's fine for writing boilerplate, which is basically the AI assistant sort of end of things. If you have any intention of debugging it when it goes wrong, and if you want someone to understand it in 5 years when you've been hit by a bus or have left the company, I wouldn't. I don't like the idea of writing at scale, because that's not the point. If you need something throwaway to generate a whole bunch of scripts for you, or just like I have this file format and I want to dump it into this one. I'm never going to do this again. Hell yeah, I mean, you can quickly check that it looks right. Good. I don't want to spend any more time on this. No one's paying me for this. It's fine. But if I'm building infrastructure or anything that I'm going to be modifying and upgrading and enhancing later on, I I want to understand. I want to be making the fundamental decisions about how it works. And if something can save me the time of writing out a class structure and 20 function shells, so I don't have to spend a half hour just typing when I could, fine. That's great. But I want to be filling those shells myself.
yeah, the black
Um,
boxness of it is danger. That's
it's
danger.
Yeah, especially if you're starting from that position.
Mm.
So I do have. I know we're short on time, but I did have one more
Are we?
question, which is
Go ahead.
for people who are solo designer developers or small little teams and are doing this stuff in house. What would be your, and I hope I don't trape something on your final advice, but your the advice you would give to make that cycle of improvement more efficient and effective?
I I think that the fewer people that are involved, the better.
Hmm.
Um, Not from a playtesting perspective, but from a like making decisions on changes. I think that like trusting people that have the experience and are good at what they do, like to do it without having a lot of voices, because very quickly, the more people that come into a development project, um, yeah, just the harder things get, right? Like opinions differ and all that. So I feel like identify who the person is, if it's you or if it's someone you trust that is the best at it, and kind of let them guide it. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think similarly, like the most common things I see in playtesting, obviously, be playtesting a lot.
Yeah, obviously.
The most common issues I see in playtesting from really small, like especially self publishers, are sort of in two areas. One is if you aren't already, stop playing in your playtests. When you are playing, I see this a lot when it's like 4-player games or 5-player games, and the designer is there playing in the game at almost every playtest. And it is important to play your game to get a feel to understand how it's working. But when you're playtesting in public, the fact that you're playing is doing a couple things. One, it's biasing the way the game is playing out. Your play decisions are showing other players patterns and paths through the game's systems. You're giving them reminders essentially just by playing the game. So it's harder to understand what might be confusing. And then the second is you are losing a lot of your ability to observe the players and take notes. And a lot of designers I see really early on rely on post game feedback, surveys or like asking questions. And those things are good. You want to be doing feedback after the playtest. But the purpose of feedback is to understand what was happening during play and the experience that you're trying to measure, the experience that you're trying to iterate is happening while people are playing the game. And if you're not watching that, if you're not taking notes on that, you're missing, 85, 90% of what you should be capturing out of a given test.
Yeah. Agree. And people are by nature kind of unreliable. Also, they might be trying to be nice, and also a lot of them lack the actual vernacular to communicate what they actually mean. They will say stuff like, "I don't know, it just felt a little off." What does that mean? I don't know. I can't thread that. And so, if you're looking at taking data, um, you can look at behaviors. So we count behaviors, like we count like how many times did that person lean in, and how many times did they express frustration, how many times. Those are the types of things that we're trying to measure, and when they did it, around what action did this happen. And a lot of people won't remember specifics, but they'll remember like a feeling they had, a general feeling. And that's well and good, and we want people to feel listened to, and we do listen to them. But I think it would behoove you to either make sure that you can say, "Hey, can I videotape this?" So you can go and review it at like triple speed. That's fine, and just kind of slow it down when you see like, "Oh, that's interesting. They're doing this behavior again." Or even better, that you can track the behaviors and write notes while you're watching. That is a whole skill set. I went to 10 years of school to learn that skill set as a therapist, because it is really you're watching behavior and tracking it. So I think it would behoove you to get good at that as well. I do have one more question actually,
Mhm.
and I know we're getting late, so I'm gonna make it quick. When does a developer become a co-designer?
Mm.
I know John alluded to that before, so
John, disagree with me here, but I feel like those, to a certain degree, are mutually exclusive. I feel like being a designer has very much to do with like participating in the earliest stages of the design, and a developer very much has to do with participating in the later stages of design. And if I just feel, I mean, my reaction to that question is that if you're in a position to be a co-designer, then like you're in that part of the game that is not development yet, right? Because as soon as you cross into that, now it's not, you're not just a designer, you are a developer. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the timing has some causes those things to be very different in my mind. But
Yeah. And so I've had lots of games where I changed very core systems and I didn't feel that it was correct to ask for credit as a co-designer, even though a significant amount of the design work was done by the development team. But I have on a couple very rare occasions asked for co-designer credit. And the two situations in which I do so are we are contracted to make an expansion for the game that already exists. So, and often the expansion is based on an element of the game that we added as developers. So, a good example of this would be Kabuto Sumo. This is a game about wrestling beetles. It came in from the original designer, Tony Miller, who's a wonderful designer. And all of the pieces were circles. And you pushed circles into a ring, and then they pushed out other circular discs. You pick those up and you push them in. And our main contribution as developers was adding the idea of some more toyetic custom pieces that played with the physics of the game. Custom shaped pieces of wood that gave each wrestler sort of unique powers. And we did not take designer credit on the base game. That was a development that we added during the development process. However, when it came time to make the expansion was 8 new wrestlers. And the only thing in the expansion was, and the primary selling point of the expansion was these new shaped pieces, which we designed all of the characters and all of the pieces that were the unique selling point. And so we asked Tony, we were like, hey, this expansion is coming up. We would love to be listed as co-designers with you. This expansion wouldn't have existed if you hadn't designed this game, but all of the contents of the expansion were designed by the development team. And so that was a situation where I felt comfortable asking for it. even though we were contracted as a developer, and we were paid a flat fee for that expansion.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer is that's sort of a rare case. Most of the time, I encourage developers to like, you let go of your own ego a little bit as a developer, and you are not the star, right? The game is the star, the designer is the star, and Brieger Creative is, as a firm, like, we're behind the scenes. People who don't work in board games have no idea who I am, and I like it that way, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't need the player doesn't need to thank John Brieger when they play the game, right?
I think that's an important point too for designers. Like, that's what you want. You want someone that sees the beauty of your game, that's excited about the core thing that's cool about your game and wants to make it better and doesn't want to like come in and redesign it, right? Like, I think that's an encouraging thing to hear as a designer, is like, oh, someone really believes in this and is going to put a lot of effort into making it the best version of itself.
Yeah, I've never asked for co-design credit because I've never changed the intent of the game, right? And that's how I view a game, as a curated experience in a box. And if I didn't change the experience, I did no design at all. I did development because I might have literally ripped the guts out of it and put it back together, but I made it do what you wanted it to do, and I used your system to do it. So I'm not really a designer, even though I might have done a lot of design work, right? So that's how my team is set up. That's what we do, and we've never ever asked for co-design credit. And so, like, sometimes when developers ask us, "Oh, like, can I get co-design credit on the thing?" It's like, you changed two numbers. What did you do? And you got paid for doing that before I ever saw a dime, right?
Yeah.
Because I get paid on residuals when you sell the game. You got paid because you're a full-time employee. That is your job. You did your job. You're not the designer, you're the developer. And I've had to have this conversation with people before. Like,
Wow.
what do you think? Like, are you really new at this, or what's happening here?
Yeah,
because that to me is outrageous. Outrageous.
Yeah.
And I say that as a developer. I am one of you. So what's happening here?
Yeah. And that's back to like development. That sort of development work is design work thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, you have to embrace the fact that as a developer you are going to be design work, and that doesn't make you a co-designer of the game. That's part of being a developer, is doing design work.
Yes. Agreed. Awesome. Well, it is 10 after 10 here in the East Coast, and Mondo looks very hot because he's in the basement in Atlanta.
I had to turn the fan off.
I had to turn the fan down because it was interfering with his mic. So we're going to call it. Oh,
I'm in my van right now because my
really?
kids are still up. Yeah, I have a camper van that's renovated, so I'm outside. I was hoping you couldn't tell in the camera, but
no,
I'm fine.
I can't.
Fine.
I've seen you in a couple different places because you make content from different places in your house. So it's like, okay, where's he now?
Studio.
Right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So guys, everybody out there, you have questions, we're going to put up the contact information for John and for Mondo, and you always know to reach me. But before we get there, let's just see. Okay, yeah, here we go. So you can reach me on Blue Sky at, how come this isn't changing? Oh, there it goes. It's changing now to Senfonglim at Senfonglim. There you go. And George, where can they reach you and Kat?
We still say Dreyerink on all the things, but if you want to contact us, it's largely Insta and Blue Sky.
Yeah, there you go. Maple syrup is on all the things, and like George, I mean, really, it's Insta and Blue Sky. Mondo, where are you?
So I make content about board game design on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. My handle is Games by Mondo in all three places. You can find me there. Pretty easy to find.
Excellent. And John, where do people get a hold of you and your teams?
You can find me at John Brieger on Blue Sky, and on TikTok, though I'm not particularly active there. The best way to reach out to me is through our studio's website, briegercreative.com, and we have a contact form on there, and it goes right to me.
Excellent. And so if you want to help keep the lights on here, you can go check out patreon.com/meeplesyrup. And I told the two of them that I would randomly choose who gets to give final advice first. And their goal was to give the final advice that they thought the other person would give. So we're playing a little game here tonight. All right. So heads, John, tails, Mondo. Oh, Mondo goes first. There we go.
Hey, all right. My advice is listen. It's listen.
Oh, and then he cuts out.
Mic drop.
What was his advice again?
Yeah.
To listen, I think. To listen. All right. Well, hopefully Mondo comes back so we can at least say goodbye. But John, what is your final advice that you thought Mondo would give?
My final advice, since I was not preempted by listen, though it is really good advice, is you as a developer are not making a game for you. The game is for the audience, and how that audience is set depends on the publisher. It depends on the vision from the designer, and you have to understand the audience and understand the players to understand what are the best development decisions.
Excellent. So empathy is a thing, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, and Mondo leaves us again. All right. So on that note, we don't know what's happening next week. We kind of are winging it a little bit week by week. George comes up with some questions, and then we go find some guests, and that's perfect. It's been great so far. Oh, Mondo might be back. Let's see. Oh, there he is. 3, 2, 1. Mondo, everybody. Okay. You missed John's wonderful advice. You weren't here to listen to. No, it wasn't listen. But, okay, so what's the rest of your advice around listening, Mondo?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, listen to all of the feedback that you get from every playtester ever. It's really easy to write things off, or like, hear someone give you feedback that's like not relevant to, like, they must misunderstood something in your rulebook and give you feedback about that. But even that is like information that you can use to apply to make your game better. If someone is misunderstanding a rule or misunderstanding a piece of your game, like, I don't think that there's any feedback that isn't worth listening to. It's not about, I think being good at design and development and iteration and all these things is learning how to pull the good pieces out of whatever feedback you get, even if on the surface it's silly and dumb and doesn't seem relevant. So listen.
There you go. Excellent, everybody. So we'll see you here next week, same time, same place. Thanks to John. Thanks to Mondo for coming on the show. And George, thanks for all the questions. That was great. We'll see you guys all next week. See you later. Bye.
Bye.